to marry her dream man, the brilliant scientist Julian Croft, hailed by the media as the king of AI, my ex-wife. The tech mogul Victoria Vance pushed a check for $1 billion across the table to me sign it. And get out of here with that product, her cold voice echoed through the sprawling, expensive villa. The product she was referring to was our 6-year-old son Victoria, made no effort to hide her contempt, her eyes scanning him like he was a defective item. Daniel, I need an heir who can inherit my intellect. Not a block of wood like Leo, who can barely speak. Julian is the man who is my equal. The children we have will be true geniuses. I glanced up at Julian Croft, standing beside her. He was elegantly stirring his coffee, looking at me with an expression of pity mixed with superiority. Mr. Quinn, the gulf in intellect is something you can't cross. I hope you can understand Victoria's pursuit of genetic perfection. I said nothing, my gaze shifting to the corner of the room our son Leo was holding his tablet, fingers flying across the screen, completely deaf to the argument around him. His silent, withdrawn demeanor was the perfect confirmation of Victoria's slow theory. I almost had to laugh. Slow at 3. He taught himself to code and hacked into his preschool security system to move dismissal time up by an hour. At 5. Because Victoria forgot my birthday, he threw a tantrum by swapping the presentation slides for her company's new product launch with our wedding photos during the global live stream. The background music, a classic breakup anthem. That little incident took Victoria's tech department 6 months to investigate before they finally attributed it to a malicious provocation by a foreign hacker collective. I pulled my thoughts back to the present, picked up the expensive fountain pen, and cleanly signed my name on the divorce agreement. Daniel Quinn. Not a moment's hesitation. My complete lack of emotion seemed to bother Victoria, her brow furrowed. She had clearly been expecting me to break down or beg, but I gave her nothing she wanted to show, and I refused to perform. I stood up, walked over to my son, and took his small hand. Leo finally looked up from his tablet. He glanced at Victoria, and Julian then typed a line of text on his screen and held it up. Bye, Ms. Vance. Ms. Vance, not Mom. Victoria didn't see the flicker of coldness and mockery so out of place on his young face. As we stepped out of the villa, the cold air filled my lungs, but I felt no attachment to the place I was leaving behind. Later, I used a small fraction of that $1 billion check to buy a top-floor penthouse with a state-of-the-art security system, paying in full in another city known for its tech scene. Then, I made an encrypted call and ordered several of the highest performance servers and workstations available on the market. When they asked about my requirements, I had only one fast. On our first day in the new apartment, the floor-to-ceiling windows looked out on an unfamiliar city skyline. The place had no furniture, just me, Leo, and the newly installed servers humming quietly in the background. Leo couldn't wait to connect his little tablet to the new network and start building his own private world. I sat down at another computer, took a deep breath, and let my fingers hover over the keyboard for a moment before typing out a long dormant command. A login screen popped up. I entered the alias that had once made all of Silicon Valley take notice. Q. A line of green text lit up the dark screen. Welcome back, Q. Small smile touched my lips and a fire reignited in my eyes. Victoria, you thought you bought off my past for $1 billion and humiliated my son. You have no idea that all you did was give me the capital to launch 2 entirely new lives. Yours and mine, and yours is destined to be a downward spiral. Less than a week after I left, Victoria and Julian announced their engagement in a high-profile media blitz. Business news and entertainment headlines were plastered with praise, calling them a power couple and a union of geniuses. One outlet even described it as the perfect collision of genes. I turned off the news notifications and glanced around our new smart home, which was more like a fortress of technology. The irony was thick. Victoria probably imagined Leo and me squeezed into some rundown apartment struggling to make ends meet. I logged into my long-dormant dark web account. Q. The moment I was online, my encrypted inbox flooded with high-level job offers from around the world. I picked the one with the highest payout, designing a foundational firewall for a European royal family security system. The advance alone was far more than the severance pay Victoria had given me. She had never truly understood my world. Leo adapted to his new life quickly. He decided the traffic light algorithm at the intersection downstairs was stupid and caused rush hour congestion, so he sat on the balcony with his tablet for half an hour and rewrote the entire district's traffic control logic. The next day, the neighborhood's online forum was buzzing about how the evening commute had ended 30 minutes early that night. I typed a line of code into my terminal and sent it to him. Function dinner return a moment later. He sent back a small program. When I ran it, a single word popped up on my screen: pizza. This was how my son and I communicated: simple, efficient, and completely unintelligible to outsiders. Victoria's assistant called while Leo and I were sharing a Hawaiian pizza. Her voice was formal with a hint of condescension. Ms. Vance is very concerned about you and the child. She heard you're currently unemployed and struggling financially. She wanted me to let you know that if you're having difficulties. I cut her off. Tell Victoria we're doing just fine. After hanging up, I noticed Leo frowning at a promotional ad for Vance Technology's latest smartwatch. He muttered to himself, "The UI design is so ugly." I didn't think much of it and went to the kitchen for drinks. When I came back, Leo had already put his tablet down. The next day, every promotional image on the Vance Technologies website and all their online sales channels had been altered. The smartwatch, praised for its minimalist design and technological aesthetic, now sported a garish, tacky little red flower photoshopped onto its face. Victoria's tech team scrambled, working through the night to fix the images. They ultimately classified the incident as a malicious commercial attack by a competitor, never once suspecting a 6-year-old child. Victoria was furious, reportedly tearing into her prized tech department in an internal meeting, calling them all useless. I looked over at Leo. He was completely absorbed in building a new program model. I opened a web page, the registration announcement for the International Youth Programming Competition. Pointing at the screen, I asked him, "Want to go have some fun?" Leo's eyes lit up instantly, and he nodded emphatically. The day the preliminary results for the competition were released, I was handling an encrypted order from the Middle East. Leo walked over with his tablet and showed me the screen. His alias S was ranked first, followed by a long list of competitors with scores of 0. The judges' comment section on the site was buzzing. This code is like poetry: concise, efficient, yet it carries an air of arrogant disdain for everything. I suspect some retired legend is just trolling the kids. Check the IP. It's clean. The registration info says it's a kid. Has to be a prank, right? Whoever it is, I'm betting they make it to the finals. I smiled and ruffled Leo's hair. Did you have fun? He nodded, then went back to studying his opponents for the final round. Meanwhile, Victoria and Julian's careers were soaring. Her company's stock price shot up thanks to the hype around their upcoming Aegis security system. As the father of Aegis, Julian became the new darling of the tech world and the media. I saw him in an interview on a business channel, dressed in a tailored designer suit. He spoke eloquently to the camera. The core of Aegis is true artificial intelligence. It can predict, it can evolve. This is an era that belongs to creators online. The name S was also gaining traction. This mysterious young genius was steamrolling through every qualifying round, easily securing a spot in the finals. Niche forums were taking bets on the true identity of S. Some guessed he was a prodigy secretly trained by a Silicon Valley giant. Others thought he was a secret weapon from a national cybersecurity agency. When asked about it at a tech panel, Julian just laughed dismissively. It's just some kid's parlor tricks playing to the crowd. Real technology like Aegis is what changes the world. That evening, Leo looked up at me, his face a mask of confusion. "Dad, why does this Aegis system have such a massive vulnerability?" I leaned over to look. His tablet was displaying the open source code for Aegis. He pointed with his little finger. "Right here. It's a very clever logical backdoor. The person who designed it was smart, but also very stupid." Before I could say anything, I saw him tap a few keys. "What are you doing?" I sent him an email, Leo said nonchalantly, to remind him to be more careful with his research papers. I froze. At that moment, in the most luxurious penthouse in the city, Julian Croft was basking in praise and fine wine. His phone chimed with a notification, an anonymous encrypted email. He opened it casually. There were no threats, no viruses, just a single set of geographic coordinates. He instinctively plugged the coordinates into a map. What popped up was a link to the original source of a core algorithm from his doctoral dissertation. An algorithm he had cleverly stolen and disguised as his own. At the bottom of the email was a single signature. Just a kid passing by. The wine glass slipped from Julian's hand, crashing to the floor and spreading red wine like a pool of blood. His face went pale as he frantically tried to trace the email's origin, but the screen returned only a cold, blunt message: source untraceable. That email was like an invisible needle, piercing the glamorous facade he had built with lies, and striking the deepest, most shameful fear in his heart: the lights of the International Youth Programming Competition. Finals were dazzling. A camera panned across the venue, capturing every excited and nervous face for the global livestream. I sat in an inconspicuous corner of the audience, my eyes on Victoria and Julian in the front row. They were impeccably dressed, looking every bit the hosts of this grand event. The camera zoomed in on Victoria, a special guest. As she spoke into a microphone, "I'm so pleased to see so many young geniuses here today," she said with a smile, her tone dripping with condescension. "But a true genius is one who creates world-changing products like Aegis, not someone who just dabbles in trivial competitions." Julian nodded in agreement beside her, his gaze sweeping over the contestants with a barely concealed smirk. Then, it was time for the contestant with the alias S to take the stage when a small boy in a custom-tailored suit walked out. Victoria's smile froze on her face. She instinctively rubbed her eyes as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "And now please welcome this year's biggest dark horse." The 6-year-old contestant S. Leo Quinn, the host, announced dramatically. The entire auditorium erupted in a wave of shocked murmurs. The livestream chat exploded with comments: 6 years old, you've got to be kidding me. Did some kid wander onto the wrong stage? I saw Victoria's body go rigid, an icy aura emanating from her. The final challenge was announced: a live hack of a virtual server, protected by the Aegis system, provided by the competition's sponsor Vance Technologies. A confident smile played on Julian's lips. This was his home turf, his masterpiece. He couldn't believe a 6-year-old could do a thing. Leo walked to the console, his small frame nearly swallowed by the equipment. He adjusted the chair height, and his little hands began to dance across the keyboard. No wasted movements, just the blur of his fingertips. Before anyone could fully process what was happening, the massive screen displaying the solid firewall of the Aegis system was suddenly covered in a spiderweb of cracks. A second later, it shattered completely. The timer read 28 seconds. The entire venue fell silent. Leo wasn't finished. He had gained full administrative access, but he didn't display a single line of boring code. Instead, he projected a photograph onto the giant screen for the whole world to see. It was a picture of me holding him as a baby, smiling gently beneath it. A line of text he had just typed appeared: "Dad, I'm your greatest creation." Victoria's face was ashen. Julian staggered, looking like he was about to collapse. Just then, the livestream camera found me in the audience. Flashes went off. Reporters swarmed me. A veteran tech journalist with graying hair pushed to the front, staring at my face, then back at Leo on the stage. Suddenly, he cried out, "My God, I remember now. S. Leo Daniel Quinn Q. He's Q, the legendary programmer Q, who single-handedly dismantled the Pluto virus a decade ago." The name Q dropped like a bomb, detonated in the crowd. The internet went into a complete meltdown. Facing a sea of shocked expressions, I looked calmly toward the stage. Victoria stared back, her face drained of all color. She finally understood. She hadn't just thrown away a mediocre man and a slow son. She had discarded 2 of the most brilliant minds of this generation. Her precious theory of elite genes had just become the biggest joke of the century. The letter Q set off a silent nuclear explosion in the quiet auditorium. I was instantly engulfed in camera flashes. Reporters shoved their way forward, a forest of microphones practically touching my face. "Mr. Quinn, are you really Q? What's the real story behind your marriage to Ms. Vance? Did you personally cultivate Leo's talent?" I instinctively pulled Leo behind me, shielding him from the surging crowd, but he was calm, peeking out. "Fr. behind my leg, curiously watching the frantic adults. Before tugging on my sleeve, I looked down at him. He looked up, his eyes clear and free of any panic. My gaze traveled over the crowd to the front row. Victoria stood there, her face a deathly gray, her body stiff, her lips were parted as if she wanted to say something. But no sound came out. Beside her, Julian had completely lost his composure, gripping her arm and muttering, "Impossible, this is impossible." The venue's security guards finally snapped into action, forming a circle around us to clear a path. I shielded Leo and walked toward the exit without a word. "Q, are you planning a comeback?" a reporter yelled, breaking through the line and shoving a recorder in my face. I stopped, looked straight into the camera, and said calmly, "I never left. I was just busy with a more important project." With that, I took Leo's hand and disappeared into the bright light of the exit. Once we were in the car, my phone started vibrating like a hot brick. I put it on silent. Leo had already opened his tablet and was swiping through it. A moment later, he held it up for me to see. It was the trending topics list on every major social media platform. Without exception, the #1 topic was legendary programmer Q is Victoria Vance's ex-husband. Right below it were 6-year-old genius cracks Aegis system in 28 seconds. Victoria Vance's elite gene theory becomes a joke, and the king of AI's persona collapses. The comment sections were on fire. Let me get this straight. CEO Vance dumps the legendary once-in-a-decade genius Q for the king of AI and calls her own son with Q. Slow, then said slow. Son demolishes her new fiancé's masterpiece on a global live stream. Is this not the best dark comedy of the year? To add to that, she gave him $1 billion settlement, so she paid $1 billion for someone to come and wreck her own show. That's some next-level business acumen. So the CEO meticulously filtered her options and threw away 2 aces. Did she get her gene sorter from Wish? Leo swiped the screen again, and a crudely made GIF popped up. On the left was an arrogant-looking Victoria talking about her gene theory in an interview. On the right was the clip of the Aegis firewall collapsing. In the middle, bold text read, "Worst investor of the year." Leo looked at the GIF, and a small, quiet laugh escaped his lips. I opened my stock app. Next to Vance Technologies' ticker symbol was a glaring field of red. The stock had hit its limit down at the opening bell, wiping out billions in market value. In an instant, the headline below was stark: Aegis myth shattered, Vance Technologies faces biggest credibility crisis in its history. My phone screen lit up. The caller ID read Victoria Vance. I stared at the name. But before I could do anything, Leo took the phone from my hand. His tiny fingers tapped the screen twice, swiftly adding the number to the block list. He handed the phone back to me and typed a message on his tablet: "Junk data. It will slow down the phone's performance after the chaos at the finals." The feeding frenzy online was just getting started. Julian Croft locked himself in his apartment, frantically making calls, but the head of the PR firm that had once fawned over him now just sounded exhausted. "Julian, we can't contain this. Our servers are crashing from the traffic. It's Q. What are we supposed to do?" "Useless," Julian screamed, throwing his phone against the wall. He grimly opened a top-tier programmers forum to gauge the sentiment. The pinned thread was titled "Technical Analysis: The Possibility of Cracking Aegis." In 28 seconds, he clicked on it. The original poster had deconstructed Leo's attack path line by line, finally pointing out the logical backdoor he called a work of art. This backdoor is exquisitely designed under normal circumstances. It looks like a security redundancy. But with a specific initial key, the entire system becomes an undefended playground. What's interesting is that the key generation logic is 90% similar to a discarded draft from Q's legendary Athena's Shield project from a decade ago. The replies came fast and furious. "Holy crap, I knew the underlying architecture of Aegis looked familiar." Turns out he couldn't even copy his homework right. "It's worse than copying. It's a pale imitation that missed the entire point. Q's design was an integrated offense-defense system. This guy tried to draw a tiger and ended up with a dog, leaving a self-destruct button for himself. LMAO. So the king of AI is actually the king of cut and paste. Even more damning, someone followed that thread and dug up the doctoral dissertation that had made Julian famous. The core algorithm in his paper was exposed, as being nearly identical to a concept Q had posted in a niche geek community years earlier, just with some flashy, useless modifications. The coordinates Leo had anonymously sent him were now public. Knowledge. Becoming the final nail in his coffin, the praise he once received turned into a tidal wave of mockery. Every highlight of his academic career was placed under a microscope, and proven to be either stolen or exaggerated. The doorbell rang harsh and insistent. Victoria Vance stood outside, her face ashen, her eyes bloodshot. The expensive designer suit she wore was wrinkled, stripped of its usual commanding presence. Julian, the board of directors, wants an explanation, she said, her voice raw and devoid of any warmth. Victoria, it's Daniel. He set me up. Julian lunged for her arm like she was his last lifeline. He's jealous of me. He can't stand to see us happy. Victoria looked at him with the eyes of a stranger, slowly, deliberately. She pried his fingers off her arm one by one. I'm not asking about Daniel, she said, pulling a file from her briefcase and slamming it on the table. This is the report from the tech department. They worked all night. 37% of the core code for Aegis has a clear, traceable, open source origin. Another 20% consists of parts that even your own team members can't explain the principles of. She paused, then said, enunciating every word, Julian, the Aegis you were so proud of was a bomb you planted yourself, and now it's gone off. The blood drained from Julian's body. He collapsed onto the floor, his lips trembling, unable to form a single word. He thought his deception was seamless, but he had forgotten one thing in this world: code doesn't lie. The next day, Vance Technologies posted statement on its official website. It announced that the company was forming a special committee to thoroughly investigate all technical issues related to the Aegis system project, effective immediately. Julian Croft was suspended from all duties at the company. The language was corporate and cool, but it was a public declaration to the world. They were personally tearing the glittering costume off the king of AI they had propped up on a pedestal. Vance Technologies stock hit its limit down for 3 consecutive days. In Victoria's office, the ashtray was overflowing, and the air was thick with the smell of anxiety. Her eyes were bloodshot as she stared at the stock charts cliff-like dive on her computer screen, the furious roars of board members echoing from her phone. Victoria, the market has lost all faith in us, not in Aegis, and certainly not in Julian Croft. You have to cut ties with him immediately, or you're going to drag the whole company down with you. Cut ties. Victoria irritably ended the call and tossed her phone aside. The office door opened, and Julian walked in. He had shed his polished image. His face was pale, his eyes red and swollen. He looked utterly defeated, a look that had once been an effective weapon for him. But now all Victoria felt when she looked at him was disgust. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice raspy. Isn't my life complicated enough? Julian didn't speak. He walked to her desk and gently pushed an envelope toward her. Victoria opened it impatiently. It was a photo of a little boy. Julian's voice was deliberately soft, trembling with a desperate gamble. Victoria, this is my son Cody. He's 3 years old. He's my blood, my genes. He's the genius we've always wanted. Victoria stared at the photo, speechless. The office was deathly silent, broken only by the sound of her increasingly heavy breathing. A child. She had abandoned Daniel and Leo for a child with supposedly superior genes. She had put Julian on a pedestal, telling the world he was the partner she needed to create a genius. And now this man, exposed as a fraud, was presenting her with a child he had with an ex-girlfriend, claiming this was the genius she was looking for. She could already see the headlines: Vance CEO falls for academic fraud. Poised to be stepmom, fruit of elite gene theory. Turns out to be another woman's son. The very gene theory she had used to condemn Daniel had become a boomerang, and it had just hit her squarely between the eyes. This is our hope, Julian said, trying to take her hand, his eyes welling with tears. Victoria, we can use this child to make a comeback. We'll tell them this child is the real genius. Victoria yanked her hand back, looking at his tear-streaked face. She found it all so absurd that she started to laugh, her shoulders shaking. She was laughing at herself for being a complete and utter fool. She leaned back in her massive executive chair and closed her eyes, feeling all the strength drained from her body. This wasn't hope. This was the final chain that would drag her down into the abyss with him. This was the life sentence. She had passed on herself meanwhile in a penthouse on the other side of the city. I had just finished a multinational video conference, finalizing a deal on a next-generation cybersecurity, Protocol Leo, was wearing a pair of kid-sized headphones focused on composing a background track for a little game. He was designing bobbing his head to the rhythm my lawyer called his voice. Laced with the excitement of someone enjoying the show, Daniel got some gossip for you. Julian Croft has a son who's come out of the woodwork. He's trying to use the kid to leverage Victoria, who's at her wit's end. I heard she's been locked in her office for a day. I said, looking out the window. The sun was bright, illuminating the fine hair on Leo's focused profile. Got it. I hung up and walked over to Leo, watching the musical notes dance across his screen. Dad, listen. Leo handed one of his headphones to me. I put it on a light, playful melody, filled my ear like wind running through a sunny field in my world. The weather was clear and bright. The news that Julian Croft had a child with his ex-girlfriend eventually broke. It didn't come from an official statement, but from a leak by a popular gossip blogger, complete with photos of Julian holding a young boy while entering a high-end residential complex with Victoria. The headline was sensational: King of AI's Last Stand, Vance CEO may soon be a stepmom. The story was like a drop of oil in a hot pan, instantly causing the already simmering public opinion to explode. Am I seeing this right? First academic fraud, and now this soap opera drama. Congrats to CEO Vance on acquiring one liar complete with a limited edition plagiarized offspring. Does this mean the kid can just copy and paste his school essays? Don't be so mean. But I did laugh. CEO Vance's gene sorter is now fooling itself. Vance Technologies stock promptly hit its fourth consecutive limit down the board, convened an emergency video conference. Every face on the screen was grim enough to curdle milk. Chairman Davis, the man who had first discovered Victoria, and a company veteran, took off his glasses and slowly polished them. His voice was calm, but carried an unchallengeable authority. Victoria, you are now a liability to this company. Victoria opened her mouth, her throat dry. Mr. Davis, I can handle this. Handle it. How? Another director cut her off by marrying an academic fraud and telling our shareholders that his child with another woman is going to save the stock price. What do you take? The market for the board has reached a unanimous decision. Chairman Davis said, putting his glasses back on and looking at her, effective immediately. You are suspended from your duties as CEO. Vice President Alex Chen will take over in the interim. You need a vacation to deal with your personal matters. He lingered on the words personal matters. With extra weight, the video call was cut from their end. Victoria sat there for a long time, staring at a grid of black screens. When she got home, the lights of the old Vance family estate were blazing. Her mother, an elegant woman who had always been so proud of her, sat in the main chair in the living room, clutching a string of prayer beads, her face livid. Mom, her mother, didn't look at her, just threw a newspaper at her feet. The front page featured the photo of Julian and the child. You have brought shame upon the Vance name, she finally said, her voice tight with rage. You were the one who insisted on the divorce going on about genes and the future. And for what you've thrown away your career and the family's reputation for a charlatan. Victoria's father sighed from the side. Victoria, what possessed you to go after Daniel? Like that he was a decent man. And even if Leo was quiet, he's your own flesh and blood. What's the use of saying that now? Her mother slammed her hand on the table. Tomorrow, you will issue a statement and cut all ties with that man. Victoria flinched, looking up with empty eyes. Mom, he won't agree to it. Then sue him for fraud. Victoria said nothing more. She knew it was too late. Julian had become a leech. She couldn't get rid of a leech she had willingly attached to herself. She stumbled out of the family home and drove back to the villa she had once shared with me. It was empty, cold, and devoid of life. She went to the liquor cabinet, pulled out a bottle of whiskey, and drank straight from it. The burning liquid seared her throat, but couldn't numb her frayed nerves. She suddenly thought of me. She remembered how I always kept the house in perfect order, the glass of warm water I would hand her when she was drunk, and the look in my eyes which had once held a light when they looked at her. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling. As she dialed the familiar number from memory, she pressed call. There was no ringtone, only the cold, automated voice of the system. "We're sorry, the user you have dialed is currently unavailable." She paused, then realized he wasn't on another call. She had been blocked. Victoria slumped against the sofa, the phone slipping from her hand and falling onto the carpet, its screen lit up, illuminating her defeated face. She looked around the multi-million-dollar mansion and suddenly realized that besides herself, there was nothing left. In that moment, her world completely fell apart. I saw Victoria again, in the lobby of my apartment building. Leo and I were just coming back inside. He was holding a new model of the solar system, explaining the formation of the asteroid belt to me. Victoria was standing just outside the revolving doors, looking like a haggard statue. She had lost a lot of weight in just a few days. Her eyes were sunken, her usually perfect hair was a mess, and the expensive suit she was wearing was wrinkled as if she'd been sleeping in it. The moment she saw us, a flicker of light appeared in her eyes. She rushed forward, only to be stopped by the diligent security guard, Daniel. She called out to me through the glass, her voice hoarse. I stopped and gently pulled Leo behind me. The guard saw me pause and asked hesitantly, "Mr. Quinn, this lady says she's your—" "I don't know her." I cut him off. Victoria's face went white. She started banging on the glass, drawing stares from everyone in the lobby. "Daniel, it's me." "Victoria, let me in. We need to talk." I ignored her and started walking toward the elevator with Leo. "Daniel." She suddenly screamed, "I was wrong. I know everything now. Your cue Leo is a genius. It was all my fault. I was blind. Please, just give me one more chance. We can start over for our son." Her voice broke, and by the end she was practically shrieking. I finally turned around and looked at her coldly. She seemed to see a glimmer of hope and started rambling, confessing her mistakes, cursing Julian, and dissecting her own foolishness. When she saw I remained unmoved, she did something that made everyone's jaws drop. Her knees buckled, and right there on the other side of the polished glass door, she fell to her knees. The woman who not long ago stood at the pinnacle of the business world was now kneeling on the ground in the most humiliating way, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Daniel, I'm begging you." Before I could speak, I felt a gentle tug on my jacket. Leo held up his tablet. On the screen was a little garbage sorting game he had designed himself. A cartoon character, with Victoria's face pasted on its head, stood in front of 4 bins. A large bolded red text box popped up in the middle of the screen. "Warning, unrecyclable, hazardous. An oversized waste detected. Recommend contacting professional services for inert disposal. Do not discard randomly, as it may cause environmental contamination." I almost laughed out loud. I pulled my gaze away from the screen and gave Victoria one last look. Then I turned to the security guard beside me. "Please take care of this. It's bad for the building's image." With that, I took Leo's hand and walked into the elevator without looking back. Just before the doors closed, I heard Leo whisper, "Dad, her behavioral logic is strange. My database has no matching patterns." I patted his head. "That's because some things, from the moment they're thrown away, lose all value of being analyzed after my identity as Q was revealed." My life became a lot less quiet. I turned down countless interview and partnership offers, but one email managed to catch my attention. It came through an encrypted channel from someone named Elara Hayes. The name carried serious weight in both the venture capital and tech worlds. She was the founder of Celestial Capital, a dual doctorate from Harvard and MIT, and was famous for her sharp instincts and decisive investments. She had backed more unicorn companies than Victoria had ever even met with. More importantly, rumor had it she was a top-tier programmer herself. The email was simple and direct. "Mr. Quinn, I apologize for the intrusion. I'm currently working on a model for a decentralized trust network and have hit a few roadblocks. I was hoping to consult with the designer of Athena's Shield. Would you be available to meet?" She mentioned Athena's Shield, my legendary project from a decade ago. Instead of just name-dropping Q like everyone else, that piqued my interest. I arranged to meet her at a private tea house. Elara Hayes was even more impressive in person than in her business magazine photos. She wore rimless glasses and had a gentle demeanor, but her eyes were sharp when she saw Leo with me. She didn't show the slightest surprise, just offered him a warm, natural smile after we sat down. She didn't talk about investments or collaborations. Instead, she pulled up a complex architectural diagram on her tablet. Here she said, pointing to a node you're designed for this redundant verification logic. I've always believed that if you altered its trigger weighting, you could increase security by an order of magnitude at the cost of only 3% efficiency. What are your thoughts? We talked for the entire afternoon, jumping from distributed networks to quantum computing and the ethical boundaries of AI. She was quick-witted with unique insights. Talking to her was a pleasure, not a chore. At one point, Leo pushed his tablet in front of Elara. It displayed a short program he had just written. Elara didn't seem annoyed at all. She studied it carefully, then thought for a moment before telling him, "Your idea is very interesting. Using a reverse algorithm for data cloaking, however, if you add a timestamp variable right here, it would be even harder to detect." Leo glanced at her, took back his tablet, and his fingers flew across the screen, making changes. A moment later, he looked up and gave Elara a slight nod, his version of high praise. As we were leaving, Elara said to me, "Mr. Quinn, your talent shouldn't be reserved for just one more important project. Your work is one of the most important projects this era needs you." Her gaze then fell on Leo. "And it needs him too." On the way home, Leo suddenly said that I ran a check on what her firewall is military grade. "It took me 2 minutes and 58 seconds to get in," Leo stated calmly. "Her personal assets are 3 times Ms. Vance's. No bad habits, no complicated romantic history. Overall score, 89 points. I had to smile. "Why did you dock 11 points? "Because she wants to date you," Leo added with a completely serious expression. "That will take up a portion of my time." Meanwhile, Victoria, suspended from her job and stuck at home, was scrolling through business news. A report from a tech panel popped up on her screen. The photo showed Elara Hayes leaning in to speak with me. Between us sat Leo, and all 3 of us were looking down at a tablet with focused expressions. The headline read, "Celestial Capital founder Elara Hayes and legendary programmer Q explore the future of AI." The coffee cup slipped from Victoria's hand, crashing onto the expensive carpet as dark liquid spread across it. She stared at the photo. The 3 people in it looked like a single unbreakable unit, a world she had never been a part of and was no longer qualified to enter for the first time. She clearly understood that Daniel Quinn's world truly no longer had a place for her. The Global Tech Summit, spearheaded by Celestial Capital, was packed to capacity. Elara Hayes hadn't taken a seat at the main table. Instead, she sat in the center of the front row like any other attendee, waiting quietly in the shadows at the very back of the auditorium. A figure slipped into a seat. It was Victoria. She wore a hat and a mask, hiding herself completely like a fugitive come to witness her own sentencing. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight hit the center of the stage. I walked out without any lengthy introduction. The large screen behind me lit up with a single word: revelation. The AI of the past has been a tool, an imitation, a calculation based on massive datasets. My voice, calm and clear, carried throughout the venue. Today, we want to explore another possibility. We haven't invented a new artificial intelligence. We've simply taught it how to have an imagination. A low murmur rippled through the audience. "And now please welcome the chief architect of the revelation system, Leo Quinn." As I finished speaking, Leo, dressed in a small dark blue suit that matched mine, walked out from backstage, holding his tablet. He stood beside me and gave the audience a stoic bow. The crowd was silent for a beat, then erupted into a buzz of confusion. I ignored it and got straight to the point. "A live demonstration. Is there anything anyone here would like?" "Revelation." To create a reporter in the front row boldly shouted, "Design a security system safer than Aegis." The question was dripping with provocation. Leo tapped a few keys on his tablet. On the big screen, a waterfall of code poured down, converging into a complete sophisticated self-evolving 3D defense system architecture. Next to it, a 30-page vulnerability analysis report was automatically generated, targeting every major security product on the market, including Aegis. The entire process took 17 seconds. A tech expert in the audience audibly gasped, "That's a dimensional takedown," he muttered. In her corner, Victoria clenched her fists so tightly her nails dug into her palms, but she felt nothing. As if that wasn't enough, Leo looked up at me. then typed another command into his tablet based on my father's current emotional fluctuations. Compose a lullaby for me a second later, a gentle yet powerful piano melody, one that hadn't existed before. Flowed from the auditorium speakers, it was soothing, yet it carried the vastness of a starry sky. I looked at Leo, who was looking up at me. His eyes filled with pure trust. I leaned into the microphone and added softly, the core algorithm of revelation is derived from the emotional link model, found in a parent-child relationship. The imagination it possesses is in essence a form of love. The entire audience rose to their feet in a thunderous ovation. Victoria couldn't stay seated any longer. She saw Elara walk onto the stage, not to steal the spotlight, but to simply hand me a bottle of water. Then she bent down and offered a fist bump to Leo. He looked at her for a second, then raised his own small fist and gently tapped hers. The scene was so harmonious. It was painful to watch Victoria stumble to her feet, knocking over her chair as she fled the auditorium in a daze. The gene theory and elitism she had worshipped were utterly shattered. She hadn't just lost a company or an era, she had lost her most fundamental understanding of the world. Backstage in the green room, Elara handed Leo a bottle of his favorite juice. He took a sip, then looked up at her score. Revised 92 points. I was curious why the extra points. Leo answered seriously, the brand of juice she chose is my optimal selection in the database. This indicates her data analysis and execution capabilities are strong. In the 48 hours after the presentation, revelation became the only topic in the global tech community. Industry giants were falling over themselves with offers, their valuations reaching absurd heights. The media described the event as the dawn of a new era. In stark contrast, after the announcement of Victoria's suspension, Vance Technologies stock continued its free fall. It was eventually given a special treatment designation by the stock exchange, a mark of a company in severe distress. The name Victoria Vance went from being a business legend to the year's biggest cautionary tale. I was turning off the financial news when Julian's name flashed on the screen. The report said he had tried to use his son as a bargaining chip to extort an exorbitant amount of child support from the Vance family, only to be met with a lawsuit for commercial fraud from Victoria's mother. The scandal was now public knowledge. None of it had anything to do with me anymore. Leo and I were in the top floor lab at Celestial Capital. Elara had given us the best equipment and complete freedom. We can optimize the processing redundancy in the new version of Revelation by another 5%, Elara said, pointing to a data stream on the holographic display, and turning to me for my opinion. Before I could answer, Leo pushed his tablet forward. It displayed a brand new optimization algorithm. Elara saw it and laughed. I take back what I just said. She casually grabbed a bottle of juice from the nearby fridge, twisted it open for Leo, and then said to me, "There's a symposium on childhood cognitive science next week. The organizers would like to invite you." And Leo, sipping his juice, typed a line on his tablet without looking up and showed it to us. Ms. Hayes' schedule compatibility analysis 93 conclusion joint attendance is viable. I was about to say something when an unknown number called my phone. I answered. A voice I had almost forgotten came through the line. "Daniel." It was Victoria. Her voice was raspy and dry, filled with the exhaustion of someone who had been completely hollowed out. "What is it?" I asked calmly. There was a long silence on the other end, so long I thought she might have hung up. "I want to see Leo just once. I won't bother you. I'll just stay downstairs and watch from a distance." She no longer mentioned getting back together or asked for forgiveness. All that was left was this one humble request. I looked at Leo, who was engrossed in his code. Half an hour later, at the coffee shop downstairs, Victoria sat across from me. She was wearing a plain trench coat. Her eyes were sunken, and she looked as if all the life had been drained out of her, with no trace of her former self. "The company is gone. The board kicked me out. The house, it's about to be auctioned," she said quietly, as if talking about someone else. "My mother wants me to go abroad to stop embarrassing the family." Here she looked up, her bloodshot eyes landing on Leo beside me. "I was there at the presentation. You two were incredible." She paused, her voice strained. "I used to think I needed a genius son to prove my own worth. I was wrong. I want to be his mother. Can I?" Leo put down his straw and for the first time turned his tablet to face Victoria. There was no complex code. On the screen, just an extremely simple logic diagram. One box read Leo Quinn Genius. An arrow pointed to another box, Victoria Vance requests to establish mother-child relationship. Then a giant red X was drawn through the entire diagram. Below it was a small note: error, prerequisite conditions not met, logical relationship invalid, request denied. All the color drained from Victoria's face. I stood up and picked up Leo's backpack. Victoria, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion as I looked at her. To you, a son was a product. A husband was a vessel, and value was the only metric that mattered. Now that you have nothing, don't you think it's a little too late to try and pick up what you threw away? I took Leo's hand to leave. In my world, you were out of the game a long time ago.